Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the Holga camera. It's a toy camera, so it's made of plastic. It's super cute. It's really tiny, and you can get all these different colors, which is my favorite part about it. But the purple one is my favorite, and this is the one I've actually been using the most lately. But this one has traveled with me to the most places. This one is like very special. It is my favorite camera in the whole world, and I know I always say that, but it really is. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. And if you ever want to buy me a present, you can always buy me a Holga, so I'll never be sad about that. So I finally got around to editing my video footage from Las Vegas, which was in 2018, which is so crazy. Time has just flown by, but I finally have time. I wanted to do kind of the informational part about the Holga at home so I could really share with you all my favorite features about it, because this is my favorite camera. I am just completely obsessed with it. Like, I feel like this is, you know, my soul in a camera. If there was a camera that I feel most connected to, it's this one. I take it with me everywhere. The photos, to me, like, every time I get a roll of film back, I'm just super excited. The thing about it is that it's mysterious and you never know what the photos are gonna look like. And so when I get my film rolls back, like, even what I had imagined the photos to look like, they still look nothing like that. The Holga is a pretty simple camera. There's not a lot of technical craziness to it. It's plastic, it's super crappy. I mean, a lot of people call them crappy cameras. That's just kind of the nickname they got. If you're a beginner film photographer, this is a great camera for you to start with. I like the one that has the glass lens, so it's the 120 GCFN. So it has a glass lens and it has a flash. And that's just so I have like a little bit sharper photos, and so that I have more options for when I'm shooting like in the dark, or if it's just kind of like a lower light situation. This is the lens here. It's 60mm lens, and you have a few different settings. There's the mountain setting for like a landscape, and you have kind of a large group of people, a small group of people, and a single person. And I basically switched between the single person and the landscape a lot. The landscape's kind of like an infinity setting, so everything's in focus, and the portrait is more up close, like, you know, probably 3 to 5 feet or something like that. And if you're somewhere in the middle, I just kind of pick and choose and hope that it's in focus. You can turn the flash on if you want. There's a button right here, and it makes this insanely loud noise. It's like ear piercing. It also has the wheel, so this little wheel on top, so you can turn. I usually leave it on the W, which is just like white regular flash, but there's red, yellow, blue. So basically what it does is it puts kind of like a colorful filter in front of the lens, which, you know, it gives you like another option for making your photos creative. And then on the bottom here, there is a bulb and a normal setting, and I always keep this taped over to the side because otherwise sometimes it'll just accidentally slide over to bulb. And bulb is basically like, you know, the exposure is as long as you hold down the flash. So if you accidentally hold it down for longer than like a second or something, your photo might not be completely in focus. It might be blurry. So the normal is like a faster shutter speed, basically. You also have this setting here, which is, it has a sun, or it has lightning and the sun. Like, honestly, it's just so weird. But I just always leave it on the sun, but I think this gives you a little bit more light. And after you take your image, you twist this little knob here, and on the back you'll see your film counter, and that's where it'll tell you what number you're on. And so there's 12 images per roll if you're shooting square, which is what I always do, but you can also shoot kind of like a rectangle shape and get 16 images per roll. But I just have always loved square photos, so that's just what I go with. Honestly, that's pretty much it. Then you've got these on the side, these metal things that help you open the back of the camera when you're loading film. But it's like super duper simple, like definitely the simplest camera that I own. You can't really mess up a photo. The only thing that I ever like struggled with was the bulb setting on the bottom. Like sometimes it would just get stuck on bulb, and I'd be like, why are all my photos so super blurry? And it's because it was on the bulb setting and not the normal setting. So just always leave that taped. But other than that, like, you don't really have problems. The back will pop open sometimes, which is why I tape it. And so I've kind of learned to fix those problems, and now I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. And they're usually about $60 to $80 for this version, but you can get a Holga camera, like the basic version of it, for about $40. So my top 3 favorite things about this camera are, number 1, it's lightweight and like very small. 2, it's easy and super simple to use. And number 3 is the photos are super dreamy and surreal. So since it is so super lightweight, it just fits in my bag. I can take it with me anywhere. I took it on my first trip to Paris. I took it on my first trip to Scotland and England. I took it on my first trip to Japan. It's just been everywhere with me. But I'll have to show you some of my favorite photos from like my very first trips with it, because at that point I wasn't really obsessed with it yet. I had just taken it with me because it was so small and lightweight. You know, I wasn't even really super into photography then, but still, like, those photos I took in Paris and Scotland are like some of my favorite ones. Like I still have them on my walls. They just like are really special to me. It's actually very sturdy. Like, I've dropped this thing 5 million times, and like the worst thing that happens is the back pops off, which is why I always tape this so that my film doesn't get leaked to the light, because I've had it pop off and like my whole film roll is ruined. But yeah, so I tape it down to make sure that if I do drop it, the back doesn't come off. And this one specifically fell in a river in Japan, and that was really scary, but Chris jumped in and got it for me, so he's still alive and kicking. So number 2 is the fact that it's super simple and easy to use, and you know, there's just not a lot of settings on it. It's not very like technically difficult to use. Anyone can use this camera. Like, it's difficult in the way that you don't know what's going to happen, and sometimes there are light leaks, but once you kind of nail down that situation, it's super easy. And number 3 is that this camera takes really dreamy, surreal photos. It kind of has like a natural vignette to the photos, which means that the outside of the images are kind of blurry and there's like a center focus point. And on every Holga, the center focus point is in a different place. Like, I have some Holgas where it's a little bit off to the left, and some where it's off to the right, and some where it's like right in the middle. So you never really know exactly where is going to be perfectly centered. There's this weird thing you can do where if you take your finger and then you look through and you squeeze your finger to a tiny, tiny little hole, the very, very center will be in focus, and then the outside will kind of be vignetted. So I kind of feel like that's just the way that it works. It's like this strange little lens. And obviously, one of my other favorite things about this camera is that I can shoot double exposures with it. And not just double exposures, but multiple exposures. You can do as many as you want. You just click the button, and then if you want to do a double, you click it again over the same frame, and you can just keep going and do as many as you want. And sometimes I accidentally do like a triple exposure or a quadruple exposure, and I don't even mean to. It's kind of hard to know remember if you've wound the film or not. So sometimes I'll get like, I think I wound the film. I don't know. So I'll just take another photo over it. And that's kind of the magic of this camera, is that you just have no idea how it's going to turn out. And I still remember the very first double exposure I ever took with this camera. I'll have to show you that too. I was in a photography class, and my teacher had recommended everyone get this camera, and we started shooting with it. And then we were looking through the negatives, and I remember seeing like this one weird overlapped photo, and I was like, what in the world happened there? And it was just like super ghostly and strange. It was a picture of my sister. And it's like a really weird photo, but I just remember being like, whoa, this is so crazy that you can like overlap images. So that's kind of where that started, and I got super into double exposures. And so that's like my favorite thing to do with this camera. A lot of my other cameras are so predictable. Like digital cameras specifically, you can see exactly what you're taking on the screen. And a lot of my 35mm cameras can't do double exposures, so I kind of like, you know, I'm very bored by them. But the ones that can do double exposures, I've kind of like learned how they're gonna look. They're more predictable. Like even my Contax 645, like I love getting double exposures back, but even with that camera, I kind of can imagine in my brain, and then when I get the film back, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like how I imagined it. But with this camera, it's like I get my film back, and I'm always just like confused and just like blown away by how it takes photos. It's just very dreamy and surreal, and the images are just really special to me. I started shooting black and white film originally on the camera, but now I've basically completely switched to color film, and I just do that mostly because I can convert the color film to black and white if I choose to, so it gives me the option. I still love black and white photos, but you know, occasionally I'll take one, like I have a lot of like rainbow type filters and things like that, so you know, that way I have the option and I can switch it to black and white if I want to, which I still end up doing most of the time. And I particularly like using the Lomography film which is actually kind of hard to get your hands on these days, but I use the 120mm color negative 400 film. That's my favorite one. And then I also used to use Kodak Portra, but it's just kind of expensive, so I try to... Lomography is a little bit cheaper if you buy it in bulk, so I try to do that instead. They actually stopped making it somewhat recently in China, like the original factories, and then a company bought the mold, and now they're still making them. So I'll have to share their information so you can buy them, because for a second there I was like really terrified that I would not be able to ever buy my favorite camera ever again, so I started stocking up on them, and I have like... I mean, I probably have like 10 now or something like that. I'm trying to get all the colors. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Love this camera. You should get one. Thank you guys for tuning into Cameras and Cats for this review of the Holga camera, my favorite camera in the whole wide world. Make sure to like and subscribe and be nice. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at The Traveling Holga or at Miles Catherine. And I hope you guys like this video. Thanks so much. Why are you being so weird? Okay. I'm nervous.
Relax.
Stop. Okay, you're making me nervous. You're like smiling.
I'm just watching the thing.
And we're gonna talk about basically like all of the best parts. You messed me up now.
That was really good. That was really good. You're great, babe. I'm joking.
Thank you guys for tuning. Now I'm messing up.
Cut!